Hey guys, welcome to another video. In this video today I'm going to be talking about my Madison Comic Con 2017 experience, what I saw at Comic Con, what was there, what the convention floor was like, the two big celebrity guests that attended in my area that I got to see, got to go to their Q&A panel. At one of those Q&A panels I actually got to ask a question for those who were there and might remember me from that Q&A panel. And I'm also going to show you kind of what I got at the convention, things I picked up, things that kind of intrigued me the most from certain vendors on the convention floor, why I picked it up. One thing I will say right away, for those who saw my Comic-Con video from last year, I definitely was more on a budget this year. Last year I went all out. I just spent so much money last year. Another reason why I spent so much money last year is Comic-Con weekend happened on my birthday weekend last year, so that was kind of my lazy reason as to why I did that last year, is because it happened on my birthday weekend. People gave me birthday money, therefore it gave me more reason to spend more money at Comic-Con last year. So many different reasons why I did what I did last year. Thankfully, I didn't, you know, thankfully this year I actually had a budget to work with, a budget that I had to kind of stay in. Once I spent a certain amount, I stopped buying stuff. So that was one smart thing I did this year that I did not do last year. And actually, this year I think I also was more so on a budget than I was at the 2015 Comic Con back when Madison first had one. But anyway, enough of that. Let me tell you about 2017's Madison Comic Con. First and foremost, the biggest thing that happened at our Comic Con this year is Stan Lee came to the Madison, Wisconsin area. Probably the first and potentially only time I've been aware of Stan Lee being in the area from when I was here. That could have changed. That could have been different. He could have attended another event that I wasn't aware of. But as far as what I'm aware of, this is one of the first times, at least in my memory, that Stan Lee has been here in the Madison, Wisconsin area. I unfortunately didn't get to meet him or get an autograph or anything, because that'd be kind of expensive to do that, as with a lot of celebrities at Comic-Con, at the Wizard World ones. But what I did get to do, and what a lot of other people got to do, and it was kind of the big event of this year's Comic-Con here in Madison, is he had a Q&A panel that was a very productive 45 minutes of people asking him questions and him giving either really funny answers or really intriguing answers about things that we really never thought about before. So Stan Lee spoke on the set. So for those who are aware of the structure of Comic-Con, there's a Friday Comic-Con, a Saturday one, and a Sunday one. So it's kind of like a 3-day event. Friday is the shortest. Saturday is kind of the biggest day where the most people speak. There's the most Q&A panels. The most vendors are in attendance on Saturdays. And then Sunday is kind of the wrap-up, where it's kind of your last chance to buy something you might have really wanted. And for those who have the 3-day pass, that's kind of your last chance to talk to a certain vendor or talk to a certain celebrity and so forth. So that's kind of how Comic-Con, at least in my area, is structured, and how the Madison one seemed to work. But anyway, back to Stan Lee. His Q&A was a total blast. A lot of kids got to ask him questions, and he actually answered them in pretty interesting ways. He talked about how he really never viewed Doctor Doom as a villain, how he kind of viewed him as this guy that had a lot of aspirations and a lot of big ideas, and he feels like people shouldn't scare him away from those big ideas, even though he definitely has villainous intentions with those ideas. So that's kind of how he's still a villain, but that's also kind of the reason why Stan Lee doesn't view him as a villain. And just his Q&A was a total blast. It'd probably take way too long in this video if I told you all the details that happened in his Q&A, but long story short, it was a lot of fun, a lot of interesting questions, a couple of obvious ones. He talked about how he created Spider-Man, which I think a lot of people know by now how he did that. Somebody asked him in the Q&A about that, which I thought was a little ridiculous, because he's explained it like 5 million times by now over the course of his comic career. So that's one question I already know way too many answers on, but there are tons of other questions and tons of other answers that he gave throughout his Q&A that I thought were a lot of fun and was a total blast. Another celebrity who was in attendance, where I got to attend his Q&A, and actually at this specific Q&A, I actually got to ask him a question. He gave me a very interesting answer that I never really would have thought of before. And that was Thomas Ian Nicholas. He's known for his roles in American Pie and Rookie of the Year and A Kid in King Arthur's Court. The one film that kind of intrigued me the most, that really made me want to attend his Q&A more than anything, was the American Pie films. I'm a huge fan of the first 3 films in American Reunion. Those are kind of the 4 American Pie films I really like a lot, and those are the 4 that he happens to have roles in. So I was kind of important to me that I attended his Q&A because I was kind of interested to hear his take on, because American Reunion happened so many years after American Wedding. I was really interested in hearing of kind of which celebrities he was interested in working with again the most in that American Reunion movie. And so for his Q&A sessions, I got to ask him that very question, and he told me that Sean William Scott was actually the most who he was most interested in working with again, for the simple reason that, when he's off camera, he's a really calm, cool man. Definitely the complete opposite of Stifler was in the American Pie films. He said once that camera was rolling, he was the Stifler character, very different from the man he is in real life. And Thomas Ian Nicholas said that's kind of one of the more interesting things about Sean William Scott that probably not a lot of people know about him when it came to the American Pie films. His Q&A panel was overall pretty fun. Unfortunately, nowhere near as big as an attendance as the Stanley one. The Stanley one literally filled up a whole arena. The Thomas Ian Nicholas one probably filled out about a third of a room, maybe, at the Comic Con convention. So not a very huge Q&A panel. Definitely kind of a lazy audience that really never really raised their hand or nodded or replied at times where Thomas Ian Nicholas was expecting a reply from certain people, but I thought it was an overall pretty fun Q&A panel with him. We all got to do a group photo at the end. We got to see this little group video thing at the end, too, that if you do manage to find it online, I don't know where you're going to be able to find it, but if you do manage to find it online, you will see me, as long as 2 of my friends who I was with, at that very video and at that very photo that was taken for that. So very, very fun Q&A panel with Thomas Ian Nicholas. Now for the overall convention floor, this year I would say there were a lot of vendors. I would say a lot of vendors who had, drawings and illustrations of comic book characters. As usual, a lot of, comic vendors selling comic books. The vendors I'm always the most interested in are the pop vinyl ones. And let me get one out just for those who don't know what a pop vinyl is. You should know what a pop vinyl is if you're watching this video and are interested in comics and interested in Comic-Con. But let me just go over it in case you don't know what that is. So this is a pop vinyl. These are supposed to be character little figurine collectibles. They come in a box. I personally keep them out of the box and put them on a bookshelf somewhere to kind of save some room and to put more pop vinyls around the room and so forth. So they're little action figure things with big eyes, and they're, for the most part, they're book characters, movie characters, TV show characters, video game characters, all that kind of stuff. So at Comic-Con, these things are pretty big just because, if you have a favorite comic book or a favorite movie, more than likely, one of your favorite characters from that story is going to have a pop vinyl. And for those who don't know what this is Blanka from Street Fighter, and I'm going to talk about him here in a minute. But anyway, the overall convention floor, I would say not as many pop vinyl vendors as we had in the previous 2 years. The previous 2 years, like anywhere you walked, there was a vendor selling pop vinyls. Still quite a few pop vinyl vendors, pretty cool pop vinyls they were selling. But it didn't seem like there was as many this year. I would say overall, celebrity guest-wise, Stan Lee and Thomas Ian Nicholas, at least for me personally, were the 2 bigger celebrities we had. I really couldn't tell you who some of these other celebrities were. They must have been from a TV show or a web series or something that I wasn't familiar with. In the past, I would be able to explain to you what each of these celebrities were and kind of where they came from. This year it would have been a little bit harder for me. We were walking by people and my friend's like, who's that or who's this? I'm like, I don't know. They're clearly from a TV show that I'm not familiar with, but yeah, still pretty fun. Still a lot to do. Tons of gaming choices, tons of comic book choices. If it's at Comic-Con, you're going to find it at Madison Comic Con as well. That's kind of how this convention floor was laid out. I really do feel like this year there really wasn't as many vendors overall as there have been in the past 2 years, but maybe that's just me. Maybe it was just more spread out. The layout was different, therefore throwing me off a little bit, but that's kind of what my impression was when I was walking around the convention floor. Still really good, still great vendors, but that was kind of the impression that I was given. Now, to show you what I got, because I know this video is already going pretty long, one of the pop vinyls I got, as I showed you earlier, is the character of Blanka from Street Fighter 2. Really like Street Fighter 2. This is usually the character I play in the Street Fighter video games. Didn't have Blanka yet. This is his original green and orange design from the games. This is the one that I wanted. Found him for about $12 maybe at Comic Con. So pretty good deal, and one of my favorite characters from Street Fighter. Let's see here. Always been looking around for cool Space Jam pop vinyls ever since I heard that they were doing those. Taz has always been my favorite Looney Tunes character, so I managed to find Taz in his Toon Squad Space Jam uniform from the movie Space Jam. He's holding a basketball. Apparently it's supposed to spin somehow. I don't know if there's a little contraption down there that lets you spin in, but we're not going to do that today. I just want to show you that I got him. So this is Taz from Space Jam, one of the pop vinyls I picked up at Comic-Con. One that I actually found that was actually a really good deal, and actually the vendor who I bought this from was kind of jealous of me just because it was such a great deal and a fun character from a fun movie. I managed to find Clark Griswold from Christmas Vacation. Online, this thing almost runs about $50, if not more. I found it for $12 at Comic-Con, still in the box. Should have brought the box to this video just because to show how valuable he is, but took him out of the packaging. He's going to go on the bookshelf somewhere in my room. Really glad I found this for the great price that he was. $12 for a Clark Griswold, which is pretty expensive online. Very happy to find this guy at a treat price, and the vendor who I bought this from, once again, was pretty jealous of me for buying this. I almost bought this pop vinyl at Barnes & Noble a really long time ago, but it wasn't until just recently where I got around to buying him. And that's Sam I Am from Green Eggs and Ham from Dr. Seuss. Like I said, he is available at Barnes & Noble most of the time, I believe, or was a exclusive there at one point. Managed to find him for a pretty reasonable price. I think he was about $15, so probably a little more than you would have paid for it at Barnes & Noble, but he is furry, believe it or not, so I think that's kind of a cool feature of some of the Dr. Seuss pop vinyls. Actually is real fur on here. So I picked up little Sam I Am at the Comic-Con as well. He apparently doesn't want to stand up, so... I got a original Donkey Kong arcade classic magnet at this little magnet vendor at Comic-Con. So isn't that kind of cool right there with it's trying to look like the original Donkey Kong arcade cabinet. So I'm going to put that in the fridge somewhere upstairs in the house somewhere. So I thought that was kind of cool and looked exactly like the arcade game. And then I won't show the person's name on here, even though I'm sure she would appreciate the promotion if I did, but just in case she doesn't, I am going to hide her name, which was posted on here, but I got one of her illustrations, and apparently from what she told me, she does have a DeviantArt page, so for those who recognize her, shout her out, but I'm not going to in case she doesn't want me to. She had a little baby Groot illustration that I just absolutely fell in love with. She did a lot of Sonic illustrations, which I thought was really cool. But out of all the illustrations she was selling, I did buy one of her baby Groot ones. There was more than one of these. She liked my jokes, which I liked a lot. Thought that was pretty cool. Liked my idea of having like a little Drax knife full of like the octopus blood or something like that from Guardians 2, or having like the Guardians 2 octopus tentacle somewhere to show that this is from the opening credits, but that was just my little idea. Still a really cool illustration, so for those who recognize this artist, cool, awesome. If you're watching this artist girl, whoever you are, thank you for this. You had a lot of really cool stuff to show me. I hope that more people were buying your stuff. Thank you for this awesome illustration if you're watching this video. So that is what I got at Comic-Con, guys, and that was my Comic-Con experience. Pretty cool this year. Would have liked to have seen more vendors, like I said, but as you can see, I got a lot of cool stuff that I got from Comic-Con that I'm going to be happy with for a long time. I guess I'll see you guys back here probably for another Comic-Con video next year when another one comes to Madison, but 2017 was pretty cool for Comic-Con, and I will see you guys back here for another future video.